The rivalry between Lincoln and Cadillac dates back to the early days of the American automotive industry. Flagship sedans and personal luxury cars always pushed each brand forward, trying to one-up each other. Today's luxury arms race takes place in the mid-size crossover segment, just as fierce as the competition was back then. Our showdown is on the 2019 Lincoln Nautilus Reserve and the 2019 Cadillac XT5 Platinum. Which $70,000 mid-size luxury crossover is the best? We're going to find out. I'm very excited to be able to do this showdown here for a number of reasons. First of all, the Lincoln Nautilus is built in Oakville, Ontario, Canada, and the Cadillac XT5 is built in Spring Hills, Tennessee in the United States. So both of these vehicles are built here in North America, but we also have both of them here in the studio. We booked the Lincoln Nautilus a few months ago and we knew we wanted to do a showdown with the XT5. Both are 2019 model years and both can be configured for about the same MSRP. And that's one of the things that we have to work with when we're doing any comparison is getting the vehicles from the press fleet. I mean, they're not going to have 10 different Nautiluses to choose from out here in Montreal, so we pretty much have to take what we can get. But if you were to configure them essentially the same, with the Nautilus having the better 2.7-liter twin turbo engine and removing the near $4,000 rim option on the XT5, you'd actually be looking at about a $200 difference between the two, coming in just around $70,500 Canadian dollars. But let's talk about these two mid-size luxury crossovers and what they have to offer for buyers. Both of them are two-row vehicles. There is no third row, so you have more cargo space in the trunk. Both have full LED lighting, adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, blind spot monitoring, 360-degree cameras, remote starters, keyless entry, power folding mirrors, power rear lift gates, and front and rear parking sensors. When we take a look at the Lincoln Nautilus, it adds LED fog lights, something that the Cadillac doesn't do anymore. They used to have fog lamps. It also has massaging front seats with 22-way power seats, a 19-way Revel Ultima audio system over the 14-speaker Bose system on the Cadillac, and a 12.3-inch driver information screen over the 8-inch screen found on the Cadillac. The Lincoln also has heated wiper blades, which is great in the winter, not something that we're going to be testing here in the middle of summer. The Cadillac XT5 has a rear view monitor, which you can't find on the Lincoln, as well as a color head-up display, twin clutch all-wheel drive that you can disengage so that the rear wheels aren't being powered and save a little bit on fuel economy, and tri-zone automatic climate control over the dual zone with the Lincoln Nautilus. And while both vehicles are targeting buyers who don't want the typical German luxury experience, they have a different approach to get there. Lincoln has been working towards a more refined, comfortable experience. They're not worried about sport or performance, and that's reflected in the new design language found on something like this Nautilus. I feel that the Nautilus and pretty much all of Lincoln's current models have a very European-inspired design. Now, some people did say that the Continental has an Audi front end to it, and it depends on how you look at it and what your personal taste is, but I do like the look of the Nautilus. The Cadillac XT5 is going in a more sport-oriented look, and especially for the 2020 model year with the new sport trim, it will have more of a V-inspired design to it. So you have more angular, sharp edges with the Cadillac, softer, more refined edges when it comes to the Nautilus. But both vehicles are in the same segment and they are very close in terms of size. And like I said, if you took the 2.7-liter twin turbo with the Nautilus, pricing would be much closer to the 3.6-liter V6 found on the XT5. But those numbers are very interesting. As configured with the 2-liter inline-4, the Nautilus produces 250 horsepower, 275 pound-feet of torque. The XT5 produces 310 horsepower, so 60 horsepower more, but actually 4 pound-feet less of torque at 271. So you actually have a little bit more torque on the turbocharged engine with the Nautilus, and then if you go up to the twin-turbo V6, you'll have even more. And also both vehicles have 8-speed automatic transmissions. But I want to talk about the different dimensions and measurements for both vehicles. You'll see each spec at the bottom of your screen. I'm just going to talk about the differences as we've done now recently on Test Drive Showdown. In terms of the length, the Lincoln Nautilus is 14 millimeters longer. For the wheelbase, the Cadillac XT5 is 9 millimeters longer. For the height, the Nautilus is 5 millimeters taller. In terms of the width without the mirrors, the Nautilus is 29 millimeters wider. And probably a big number for people who are actually going to be using these vehicles for more than just going back and forth to work is cargo volume, the amount of space you can fit behind the second row. It is 206 liters better on the Lincoln Nautilus. And that trend continues on the inside of both vehicles. The Nautilus just has more space over the XT5. 106 liters more of passenger volume on the Nautilus. 38 millimeters more front headroom. 82 millimeters more rear headroom. 40 millimeters more front legroom. And 4 millimeters more rear legroom. So again, it depends on what you want out of either one of these vehicles. If you want a little bit more power in terms of horsepower, then the Cadillac's probably the one to go with. And they are offering a 2-liter engine for the 2020 model year. So again, these two would be a little bit more comparable as configured when we look at the Lincoln. But if you want to have more interior space, you're going to want to go with the Lincoln Nautilus. And that's one of the reasons why I really like driving this car. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have this showdown for you. The last one that we did on the Mazda 6 versus Volvo S60, we did technically have both vehicles in our garage during the same time periods, but they were back to back instead of truly at the same time. Because I have the XT5 and the Nautilus in the garage during this entire week, it means we can take the Nautilus on its road test, talk about the interior, the drive, the ride feel, and everything about it, and then jump immediately into the XT5 and do the same thing, which is what we're going to do. We're going to start with the Lincoln, talk about the rest of that, take the XT5 out, go over everything you need to know about that, and then figure out which could be the next mid-size luxury crossover for you. You know, I have a very, very difficult job because every single week I have to drive a new car. And on a week like this, I have to drive 2 new cars. And the tough part is deciding which one to drive. And I have both of them for the same amount of time. Technically, the Cadillac 1 day less since I can't actually pick up 2 cars at the same time. But I have both of these vehicles at the same time. And the real tough decision has been deciding which one to drive because they're both really, really good. And because the MSRPs, even though as configured, are pretty different, there's about a $6,000 spread. If you configure them the same way, they're basically the same price. And the big difference between this and the XT5 is the engine, but we're going to use our driving segment here to tell you why the 2-liter engine is probably the better option to go with, despite the fact that you can get the 2.7 twin turbo V6 in this, and why next year's 2-liter engine in the XT5 probably won't be something that you're going to want to go for. You'll want to go with this one regardless. Now we're going to hold off our fuel economy numbers until the end. We have done the 100-kilometer test loop for both vehicles, but I just want to finish up our week with them, finalize all of those numbers, because we do also do a second number of what we did throughout the whole week. And since we're really driving these back to back, we have a pretty good idea. The climates are the same, the distances that we're driving are going to be about the same, so we'll have a really good idea. But right now, it's actually in favor for the Cadillac. And that's because it uses that twin clutch all-wheel drive system that allows you to disengage the rear wheels. This you don't have any control over. You're either in drive mode or sport mode. Drive is comfort mode. You push the S button, it's in sport, a little bit more lively. There's no real change to the exhaust or engine sound, which is good. You want nothing of that when it comes to a luxury car. But you do have a little bit more power, and I have to say that it really changes the design of this car. It feels a lot livelier than it does when you're in drive mode, but we're going to actually keep it in drive. I love driving this car in regular comfort mode because that's the whole point of it. You're not meant to go fast. You're not meant to be spending unnecessary amounts of gas. It's meant to be comfortable, relaxing, and peaceful. And those are the 3 things that really come to mind when I'm driving this car. And you'll see we're going to go on the exact same route for the XT5's driving segment. So you'll see on the camera how things are when we're going over some of these rougher patches and see how they are. But personally, I like the interior of this. It's not over the top. You have your nice, leatherish kind of style dashboard here. Controls are pretty simple. The screen is angled a little higher up than I would normally like it to be, but it is built into the dashboard rather than sitting on top. And one of the technology differences with this over the Cadillac is the 19-speaker Revel Ultima system. It sounds phenomenal when I'm listening to either my own music or through XM satellite radio. It sounds really, really good, much better than the 14-speaker Bose system on the Cadillac. I really like it. So 19 speakers with that. And when we talk about that kind of technology here, I mean, the navigations between both vehicles are pretty similar. The backup cameras and 360 cameras are pretty similar. So the audio system is going to be a big difference. The way the power folding mirrors work as well. As I mentioned, this one just is a little nicer the way that it does it. The Cadillacs, you know, you have to kind of hold your fob in order to close it, and then you have to turn it on by pushing the button when you get in the car. So the way that the Lincoln does it is just a little bit more luxurious. But then also the seating in this, the comfort on this car is outstanding. 22-way adjustment. It's not as crazy as what you can get on the Continental or the Navigator, but 22-way is still incredible. Plus, again, the massaging seats, I always forget to turn them on. There's a little button on the side there and it'll turn it on. I always have it on high for both the bottom and the back portion. It's a nice little feature to have on a vehicle like this. You don't get that on the Cadillac. But really, again, when it comes to what this car has to offer, we talked about the comfort. Ride is great. Quietness as well. You really don't hear much of the outside world. Even the turn signal indicator is different than what you get on other vehicles. It's just quieter. It's nicer. It's refined. I really do like driving it. And I have taken this car more than the Cadillac for that reason. Partially because this does stand out slightly more. You know, most people aren't going to pay attention to you regardless in a mid-size crossover, but the XT5 is Cadillac's best-selling vehicle. They sell a lot of them. There's lots of them on the road. Yes, in Manhattan Noir with the midnight gray rims and the clear taillights gives it a very distinctive look, but the Nautilus is pretty much new for 2019, right? It's a new name and it's a good look for it, so people notice it a little bit more. And I do like that when it comes to a luxury car. I'm kind of narcissistic when it comes to that. I want to have people checking out the cars that I'm driving. So that's why I like driving this. But I mean, just overall, everything works really well. And the one thing I mentioned in our spotlight, when it comes to the seating comfort in this, I sit higher up than I would in the Cadillac. And at first I thought that might be a problem. I am very close to hitting the headliner here with my head. But reality is, you sit at a much better, much more comfortable position. Your legs can sit at a 90-degree angle rather than, you know, kind of stretching out. And I'd say that on longer distance driving, this car will probably be more comfortable, especially if you're in the back seats too. The back seats are really nice back there. So if you've got kids or other adults, you're driving people around, they're going to be just as comfortable in the back as you are driving it in the front. I don't usually mention how the enhanced safety technologies work on all these cars. You know, it really does have everything. Both cars have it all. Blind spot monitoring, lane keep assist, all that stuff. Both of them work well enough. You have adaptive cruise control with stop and go with both vehicles, rear cross traffic alert, front and rear parking sensors. I mean, you name it, you've got it. There isn't anything that either car does over some of the competition. So it's definitely in line with what you would get with other luxury manufacturers. But neither car is really breaking the rules or setting any trends when it comes to enhanced safety tech. The tough part really, honestly, for me when it comes to this job is trying to decide which one I would take. I mean, if you're legitimately looking for either one of these vehicles, if you're going into a Cadillac dealership or a Lincoln dealership and you're trying to decide which mid-size luxury crossover you want, you might spend half an hour on a test drive going around with somebody from the dealership sitting in the back. It doesn't give you a great idea. And honestly, I mean, after almost a week with both cars, I haven't really come to a decision either. I mean, they're both really good. Both have slightly different ways to get to luxury. And I think that the Lincoln approach with being more relaxing is the way that I would go. If you're going for a little sportier, that's going to be the Cadillac. So it's a good opportunity now. Let's jump into the Cadillac XT5. We'll take that car on its road test, same circuit that we're doing here. We'll go through there and tell you what it feels like, and then we'll try to come to a determination which one of these is going to be the best for me, and hopefully which one's going to be the best for you. So like I said, we're doing the same sort of course along here as we do our driving segment for both vehicles. It gives me an opportunity to talk about them on the exact same roadways so that you can see on camera how they feel, but also for me too. I mean, since I'm driving them back to back on the same course, it should give me a pretty good idea of how each of them handles, performs, rides, and the overall comfort for them. And that's the whole point of this showdown. It's not about power and performance and which one has the quickest 0 to 100. It's about comfort. And that's what we're going to talk about. So here, now that we've jumped back into the XT5, you can tell that there is a big difference when it comes to the seating. It doesn't have as much power adjustment. The headrests aren't power, so you do have to move those manually. And then you also don't have massage, but you still have ventilated and heated seats just like the Nautilus. You also have a heated steering wheel, just like the Nautilus, and you've got the heated rear outboard seats, just like the Nautilus. But if you do have other passengers in this vehicle, there is a third zone in the back, so they can actually control the heat coming out of the back there, which might be a plus, especially if you've got kids, or maybe you're using this for driving people back and forth, whether it's Uber or Lyft, or maybe you're doing the carpool for work, whatever it may be. That's a nice plus to have. And another one of the killer features that comes with the Cadillac is the rear view camera. Shows you a feed from the back, so if you do have something that would normally obstruct your view out the back window, you don't have to worry about it. And personally, I like it. The next generation in the 2020 XT5 will be slightly better. It'll have a little bit more features in it, but that is a one-up over the Nautilus. They just don't have that technology at the Ford Motor Company. But let's talk about that seat comfort for a minute. They are very comfortable. I'd say if I really had to pick, it would be the Lincoln over this. Just has a little bit more control, and you sit a little higher up. This, if you're taller, would be better because you can push the seat down further. I'm actually probably a little bit in the middle of the seat height, just so that I have a pretty good visibility all the way around. But it doesn't mean it's not comfortable. I mean, it is a very comfortable ride in this vehicle with these seats. And then the suspension as well, too, eats up the road imperfections just as well as it does in the Nautilus. That's the problem when it comes to testing this. If I were blindfolded and somebody else was driving the cars around, if I really didn't know what the seats felt like, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you which one's the XT5 and which one's the Lincoln. And I couldn't tell you either which one's better, because they really are so good. The one thing I do notice in here, and again, it's not a bad thing, but I find there's a little bit more noise than there is on the Lincoln. Just a small, teeny tiny amount. We don't have anything to actually test that, but I would say that that would be the only thing that takes away from it. In terms of the road and handling, both are very, very close, but it just comes down to a little bit of the noise on this, and that's not a bad thing, and it's still way better than you get on a consumer grade mid-size crossover. But the obvious main mechanical difference between these two is the engine, because this does use the LGX 3.6 liter V6 engine over the 2 liter inline 4. This is the only engine optioned for 2019. Next year, they are putting a 2 liter inline 4 as an option for the XT5. So as it is right now, more power on this, less torque. If you get the 2.7 twin turbo in the Lincoln, it's going to have way more power. But honestly, for daily use, this is more than enough. If you're going back and forth to school, to work, things like that, whatever your daily commute will be, this is more than enough. And especially with the twin clutch all-wheel drive system, the fact that this car actually is in front-wheel drive mode when it's in touring mode means I'm saving a lot of fuel over the Nautilus that's pretty much an all-wheel drive all the time. You can't decide whether or not you're in all-wheel drive. So you have that option. You can put it into all-wheel drive mode, and you can put it into sport mode if you wanted to. But honestly, touring mode works great for me. I have no issues with it getting up to speed on the highway. No issues at all. Works very well. And you can probably see on the video too, I mean, things are really smooth in both cars, but in this one as well. I mean, both are handling these imperfections in the road very well. I have no complaints about it. I'd say, again, if you were going for a long distance drive, the Lincoln might be a little bit more comfortable for long-term fatigue, but either one of these is going to be very good. One of the major differences as well when you're driving, you'll notice it more in town, is the auto stop start system. This one, you can't turn it off, you can't disable it. That's something that will be for 2020, but there is an override on the Nautilus, so you can just push the button and turn it off there. And that's the one problem with doing this showdown, is because both of these vehicles are very good, it is difficult to decide which one is the best. And I mean, that's the problem, right? Most people aren't going to actually be spending $70,000 on this car. They're going to lease it for 3 to 5 years, and then somebody will buy it after that. But if you really are going to look at either of these two vehicles, take it on a half-hour test drive. It doesn't give you that much time to really decide which one's the best, and that has been the problem, because I've done enough driving with this that I think I've gotten a pretty good idea of how each one handles and performs. I'm still taking the Lincoln over this one when I take it out, but it's still so good, and especially with the look of this car. I like the look of this 2019. I like the paint color, really good choice. I highly recommend Manhattan Noir. Maybe not so much the rims, it's a pretty pricey option just for rims, but definitely get the Manhattan Noir if you like this dark color, and the clear taillights. That really gives this car a nice look. Slightly different from what you can get from other vehicles from Cadillac, though it is similar now to the XT4. Design wise on the interior here, it's pretty different from what you get with the Lincoln, but again, technology-wise, it's all relatively similar. You've got the 8-inch infotainment system. Both of them have XM radio, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. This one has 4G LTE as well as OnStar. We never talk about OnStar, but those are two features that you can subscribe to if you want. But honestly, tech-wise, they are very similar. It depends on how you want your layout set up. If you like this, it's kind of a simple approach, but pretty traditional to what Cadillac's been doing for the last several years. It works well. The capacitive touch buttons here can be a little finicky if you like them or not, but they are different in a lot of ways. But honestly, I mean, if you're looking for this, the size is very close between the two of them. Interior features and layout, pretty good. Comes down to what your personal preference is, and that's the problem. As we come up now, roughly where we left off our Lincoln driving segment, it's time to try to figure out which one of these I would take. And while I'm trying to figure that out, you think about what you would take too if you had this budget and if you were looking at either one of these. We're going to wrap up now by taking it back to the studio. We're going to take it there to talk about the fuel economy for both of these vehicles and kind of wrap up our final thought on this. So get your comment ready to let us know which one of these two you would take and why.
Fuel economy numbers might surprise you. First up, on the 100-kilometer test loop, the Lincoln Nautilus completed it at 7.8 liters per 100 kilometers in comfort mode, or 30 US miles per gallon. The Cadillac in touring mode completed it in 7.3 liters per 100 kilometers, or 32 mpg. But in order to see how both vehicles did during the week, we kept the mileage and driving as equal as possible. The Lincoln did 10.4 liters per 100 kilometers, or 22.5 mpg, while the Cadillac did 10.1 liters per 100 kilometers, or 23 and a bit mpg. Very close between both vehicles, and I feel the Cadillac's twin-clutch all-wheel drive system helped to keep fuel economy low, since we never used the rear wheels during our week with it. But fuel economy is a small portion of our showdown. It ultimately comes down to which vehicle is the comfiest and which is the most luxurious. Looks and comfort will ultimately be subjective, but from a technology perspective, the Cadillac does have a few features over the Lincoln. From the video rear view monitor, color head-up display, 4G LTE and OnStar, and the third automatic climate zone. Lincoln has the front massaging seats with more power adjustment, ambient lighting, and a significantly better audio system. When configured with the 2.7-liter twin-turbo V6, the Lincoln Nautilus is on par for price with the XT5 when optioned without the $3,000 rims, meaning the decision will ultimately come down to personal preference and not so much price, which is why I would take the Nautilus. I ended up choosing it more often during the week that I had both vehicles, and I found the ride, comfort, and interior noise control better on the Lincoln over the Cadillac. Even with the new features we previewed for the 2020 on the XT5, the Lincoln still fits my needs when it comes to a luxury crossover, and offers a unique experience over the competition. As long as you aren't looking for a sporty experience, the Lincoln Nautilus is the refined luxury crossover for a modern luxury buyer, and the Cadillac provides the sportier feel for those looking for an edge over the de facto German rivals.